super excited about tonight's Faena Rose event. We've been working on this event for the last few months. Back in June, I think it was, I read a full page profile on Isaac in the New York Times, read about his story, and was like, wow, we've got to get Isaac in.
I haven't skipped any chance to talk about my story. There has been tons of injustices, but with that has given me a chance to rise above, and I knew the time would come for me to start getting that story out to the world, and I think that it's bigger than art at this point, so I'm excited to share it with you guys tonight.
We're going to learn tonight about photography, his photography, urban climbing, urban exploring, if we will, and sort of the racial injustice that unfortunately he has been a victim of. Enjoy tonight, guys. Get your questions ready because he'll be taking them. I'm super excited about tonight. I remember vividly, and those who know me know that I'm an information newspaper junkie. I get many newspapers delivered to my house every day, and I have this thing where I cannot throw away a newspaper because I don't know what I'm missing out, right? Content ideas galore. And so I remember having a very long brunch, and I tend to go to my local sports bar with a stack of newspapers and have a nice long brunch going through, clipping. And I remember reading this article in the New York Times. It was a full-page story on what just kind of fascinated me, enraged me, and made me want to learn more. And I said, I need to bring this guy in because his story is unbelievable. I want to hear about his story. I want to hear about all of it, including his art. And I'm going to say there's a silver lining in this. We're gonna have a really interesting conversation. We're going to learn a lot about his life, about his career, about a lot of the racial social injustices that he's had to endure and still is. We're gonna learn about his photography and his future, which is very bright. So please, 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 warm welcome to Isaac Drift Wright. Welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
okay,
you're
we're
on.
good.
Thank you for coming all the way from
Cincinnati, Ohio.
And that's where you're
Born and raised.
born and raised. Tell me about it. What was it like? What were you like as a child?
Just as wild as I am now.
You seem pretty reserved, though.
Well, yeah. When I'm on stage and I'm talking, I definitely am. But no, I'm one of five. I've got a father from Flint, Michigan, born and raised in downtown Flint, Michigan. I've got a mother who was born and raised in rural Indiana, and very two different worlds. Their lives crossed paths in Tennessee, and where my dad was playing basketball. He was playing basketball at the University of Michigan, and then he went down to get another degree in Tennessee and was playing basketball there. And then they got pregnant with my older brother and decided to stay together. And now I'm the middle child of five. Let's see. So my parents moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. I was born on October 22nd, 1995. And then
Young.
Yes. And I've got an older brother who's 28. I've got an older sister who's 27. I'm 25. And then I've got two younger siblings, two younger brothers, one 21 and one 17.
Did one of your siblings give you the nickname Drift?
They did not.
Okay.
That came later in life.
Okay.
But no, growing up was a lot of things. So my family, obviously, I'm part of a big family, and we were always lower income, But I grew up playing a lot of sports. I grew up football, basketball, baseball. I mean, pretty much anything, you name it, I played it. And definitely school and everything like that was a super high priority. So it was always, don't bring home nothing less than an A, and having those talks. But it was more of just like, excellence was like a standard that was expected, and more so, my father would never let me half do anything. If I half did something, I had to go back and redo it. So.
Were you rambunctious as a child?
I was pretty well behaved, but I mean, I was definitely curious. Anything action-packed, adventurous, I'd get into it. I'd climb around. I was climbing full-length trees at the age of 4, 5, and I was scared, the hell out of my mother. But
No injuries?
No injuries. No, I never fell. Never. I made do. So
Better than me.
yeah. So yeah.
I've got to learn from you.
But no, I was always active. It was still the go outside and play era. That we're kind of watching go away. But we'd be out in the front yard playing wiffle ball or basketball or just whatever. So I was always running around. I used to climb our roof as a kid. Just all types of stuff like that.
So from there, from high school, you decided to enter the military. Tell us about what was the choice? What made you decide to get into the military, and at what age?
I was 17 when I initially enlisted. So the biggest thing was my childhood years, my teenage years were very difficult. My father went to prison. I started working at 13, 12 actually, to start supporting myself and start handling some things for my mom. And so at that time, I'd work any job I could. I'd cut grass, I'd shovel snow. I had 2 newspaper routes. I was just always doing something. And from then on, I just worked and I was independent for myself. And when my father returned from prison, that had a huge impact on my family. A lot of our income went away. And so, during that time, my mom was working for $10 an hour, supporting 5 kids, and it's next to impossible. Sure. But we made do. My mom and I were just talking about this the other day. How she was bringing home $1,600 a month. Half was going to the house, and then half was going to like taking care of us. And us older 3 were all coming into our teenage years, so that was very difficult. But it was at that time that I really learned how to take care of myself, and how to do for myself and how to do for my family. And so when I got into high school, I was already working. I was working a job as a machinist. I did a trade school program, and it was really good. And I had, bought a couple cars and was, feeding and clothing myself. And I just wanted to let that continue. Sure. I wanted to continue being independent. And I wanted to do something that I felt like was productive, something that would give me independence, but also let me travel, also let me, continue to have adventure in my life and stuff like that. So I was like, let me join the Army. And I always wanted to from when I was younger, so I did.
So you went straight from high school to the Army.
That's correct.
At 18, right? And you were in the Army for how long?
6 years.
And tell us a little bit about your duties in the Army. What were you stationed? What were you responsible for?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so I enrolled as a chaplain's assistant, and I did that because I wanted to both help soldiers, but I also wanted to have an active role where I was soldiering myself. And so my job entailed, on deployment, it was taking care of the chaplain, was bodyguarding him because he's a non-combatant.
Right.
And in the rear...
He's the neutral party, if you will, right?
Yeah, he's not allowed to carry... He or she's not allowed to carry a weapon at all. So I would bodyguard them on deployment, and then we would also work heavily with suicide prevention, soldier morale, things like that. And I love my job because I got to help save and help soldiers, but I also got to be there and be a soldier myself.
Of course.
And that's what I wanted to do. So I wanted to do that. I wanted to go be an Army Ranger, and then eventually I wanted to go on to Special Forces. So what I did was I went to basic training and advanced individual training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. That was August of 2014. I graduated top of my class, and then got the chance to go on to airborne school to be a paratrooper. And obviously, me and heights are no
Right.
no strangers. So
Climbing trees came in helpful at a young age.
yeah,
and
no, absolutely.
Getting over your fear of heights.
Absolutely. So off I went to airborne school, and then I went on to Fort Bragg, home of the airborne, and was stationed immediately in special operations because I had the skill set and the GT score to qualify me for something like that. So yeah, I arrived at Fort Bragg. Would have been probably March of 2015, and then immediately settled into a psychological operations unit where I started my job. Next month, I'd go to the Soldier of the Month board, win that, get the opportunity to go on to one of the Army's hardest courses, which is SEER School, stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. And essentially, it's a school teaching you how to survive as a POW, how to avoid capture, how to live on your own in the wild. You get interrogated, you get beaten, you go almost a whole week without eating. And I ended up being the youngest SEER school graduate at 19 years old when I graduated in August of 2015. I was still a private in the Army. And so that kind of started my ambition of like just wanting to do, I always wanted to do my best at everything, but that was where I was at that time. Later on, May of 2016 rather, I would deploy. And at that time, our units were involved in Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So our unit at that time was specifically designed for military propaganda, for infiltrating and influencing social networks, radio networks of like ISIS and the Taliban. And so we were doing that in Syria. At one point, we had interrupted one of their top generals' communication lines to where he felt like he had a mole in his communication line, and then killed off 10 of his best men. And so we were doing all of that through psychological warfare. And that was our job at the time. And so the chaplain and I would deploy to Qatar, and then we had teams scattered throughout because in those type of units, typically your unit works in small teams, 5 to 10 or something like that. And our job was just battlefield circulation and just making sure they were okay. It was a good deployment. We didn't lose anybody. We went and accomplished a good mission, and we were preparing for the re-invasion. I shouldn't say re-invasion, but we were preparing to retake Mosul after we had lost it back in the early 2010s. And so we kind of prepared the people of Iraq, letting them know that, hey, the United States is coming back in to retake Mosul, and that was part of our job at the time, was preparing for that assault on Mosul.
And when you were in the military, there came a point where you were injured, right?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that?
So I was jumping heavily. I was preparing to be a jump master, so I was what we would call chasing jumps. And so I've done 32 jumps, and typically when you're jumping with almost 100 pounds of equipment, you're jumping with your rifle, and so they don't know if I injured myself there, if I injured it on deployment, but eventually they discovered that my right leg has internal damage done to it, and permanently my right foot and ankle is more swollen than my left foot, so if my feet look funny, that's why. But it was kind of crushing, but liberating at the same time, because I was going through a lot of internal growth and was kind of shifting towards wanting to do something else in life, which I never thought would be a thing.
And this is what, year 5 in?
This was probably, this was year 5 when they discovered the injury and told me I had to get med boarded. But prior to that, I had kind of already started having some internal changes, and was...
Talk about that. What were the internal changes? In what regard?
Well, so I'd say a lot of them started when I was 21. I'm 25 now, but
Almost 26 in a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's right. So I know that doesn't make me old, but there's something about that tip towards 30 that's like, whatever.
You're on the north end.
I'm on the
of
north
the 20s.
end, you know, like don't talk to me about it. But so
It just gets better, I promise.
I hope so, you know. So no, I mean, I started to struggle a lot. I was obviously, when you're coming into your early 20s, like, you don't know anything. You know, I'm 25 and I still don't feel like I know anything. But I was really starting to come into myself as a person to where figuring out, you know, there comes a point in your life where it's like everything you grew up with, but then it's like, okay, but who are you? And what do you believe for yourself? And what do you want to do for yourself? And I started to kind of break out of that shell of everything I had grown up with and now into who I want to be, who I'm supposed to be. And I was shedding a lot of bad habits. I was confronting a lot of childhood trauma. I was doing a lot of those things that are important for us to break through to who we are as adults.
Were you feeling a little disenfranchised as well with the service?
I was at the time because I was struggling heavily, and I think a lot of it started with Colin Kaepernick, and Colin Kaepernick taking a knee to protest what was going on, and I agreed with that, and I struggled with that with my identity being in the service, but also struggling with what I saw going on, you know, on American soil and what was happening with the killing and the unjust treatment of plenty of African Americans. And so I was struggling with that hard. And then I was struggling with the fact that I was vocal about that, and I got reprimanded for being vocal about that while being in uniform, as if my identity as a black man came second to my identity as someone in a uniform. So that started then, and then I had my first encounter with police where I got pulled over for a speeding ticket, and I got a weapon pulled on me for doing absolutely nothing on the Ohio-West Virginia border. I was in the middle of nowhere, and that completely changed my outlook to where it had never really happened to me personally, and it ended up okay. But it was one of those experiences that definitely opened my eyes to, you know, what I could go through. And, you know, I had seen it in other people, and I had seen it with my father, but it just had never touched base with me. So I was struggling with that for sure. But then also I found photography May of 2018. So I'd gotten a camera the previous fall, never used it, because I was going through this life-altering year in 2017 where I had gone off to Ranger Assessment Selections, and I had completed the entire program, was performing super well, one of the best in the class, and it was my goal. This was my military goal, and then was told, because I had promoted to sergeant very fast in 2.5 years, and I was told I was too inexperienced of an NCO and to go on and serve in that capacity. And so that left me feeling crushed. I had lost my partner of 3 years, and then I was also having this conglomerate of different experiences that were very challenging at the time. You
had some issues with, or some of your officers or soldiers in your battalion, right? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so that would come up into 2018. But before that, I lost two of my closest friends to suicide, people that I worked alongside every single day. One after a deployment to Afghanistan, and the other one was a soldier of mine, and I lost them both to suicide. And so I was completely disenfranchised, trying to find myself, losing my partner, not meeting my goal. I mean, just everything was falling apart. And then I was vocal about why I felt like I didn't get the position I was working for, and then I got reprimanded for that, and I got kind of punished and sent to Fort Polk, Louisiana, it was kind of like a punishment for me, taking me out of an airborne unit and a special operations unit and putting me into a light infantry unit in the middle of nowhere. I mean, we kind of jokingly nicknamed Fort Polk the asshole of the Army, because it's not like New Orleans, Louisiana. It's like Western Louisiana, like off the grid. But no, it was It turned out to be the best thing for me, absolutely.
How so?
It pulled me away from any distractions. I had an apartment off base by myself in the middle of nowhere. And then I got to this unit, and I just remember I was feeling sorry for myself, honestly. But then I kind of confronted myself, and I was like, look, you can either grow and get through this, or you can just sit here and feel sorry for yourself. So I started working harder than ever, and got involved with my unit heavily. And our unit was returning from a deployment to Iraq and Afghanistan, where we had lost a couple of soldiers. We lost 2 of our soldiers in an IED blast, and then we had a third one lose his leg, a senior non-commissioned officer. And so this was where, like, really my work and my job started getting very crucial, because we had field grade officers coming into my office, and at this time we didn't have a chaplain in our unit. So it was just me holding down the fort. I'd have to send out soldiers to meet with other chaplains, but a lot of them came into my office and they trusted me and they wanted to work with one-on-one with me. And we're talking through, combat deployment. We're talking through PTSD. We're talking through the stress of losing soldiers. We're talking through the stress of, fighting for your life, literally. And I fell in love with my unit. I fell in love with my job more than ever. I started to feel like I was really right where I was supposed to be for a reason. And then we ended up losing 4 soldiers to suicide that summer, and I was working closely with them. The way that we're talking right now, I mean, dozens of soldiers would come into my office every single day, and we'd talk, and I'm no licensed.
I was going to say, do you have any formal training
Yeah,
and how to counsel?
I went through some classes for suicide prevention in the Army, but the thing was the first thing I always did, which is what I was trained to do, was, hey, can I connect you to a chaplain here or there? And they'd either say yes or they'd say no, like, I'm more comfortable with you. And I'd be like, can I connect you to a licensed therapist or whatever? And they'd either say yes or they'd say
You're
no.
one of them.
Yeah, exactly. So, we PT'd side by side. We went to the shooting range side by side. We were in the field, and everything we did, we were side by side. So there was that trust and that camaraderie there. And also, they just knew that I'd go out of my way to help any of them, And so my battalion sergeant major and my battalion commander at the time, they trusted me. And we'd work through, week by week, we had a list of high-risk soldiers that we'd work through to make sure that they were okay.
Sure.
And even on the weekends, I was checking in on these guys. I was calling, texting, I was visiting, because I just fell that much in love with my job, and it was a matter of life or death, literally.
But at some point, you felt that you realized that your ambitions to make a career out of the military was no longer what you wanted to do, and you were looking for a next chapter, right?
Yeah. So May of 2018, I started shooting photography, and I had this camera. I told myself,
You say you started shooting photography, meaning what was the catalyst for
I was
that?
in the
What
middle
made you
of
pick
nowhere. I was in the middle of nowhere, and I was working through tons of stress in my own life.
Okay.
And I just wanted an outlet, And so I told myself, well, if I'm in the middle of nowhere, then I'm going to take whatever money I save, and I'm going to travel with it. And I'm going to take this camera, and I'm just going to take pictures. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm at this point in my life where I want to see different things. And Houston was 2.5 hours away. New Orleans was 4 hours away. And I would go to Houston for the first time. And I shot at this, like, portrait meetup there, and just didn't feel like me. And people were stealing my ideas. And I was like, okay, this is just, like, not exactly it, And I love photographing anything, but, like, I just kind of, I don't even know where I remember seeing it first. I have some friends from New York that are huge inspirations of mine, and I remember seeing them climb and do what's called urban exploring. I mean, they'd be exploring abandoned places and rooftops and bridges and tunnels and just anything you never see, And they're just documenting history around the United States and the world, really. I have friends all over the world now that are documenting all these parts of cities that you never see. And
this is the type of exploring where you knock on the front door, say, "Hi, can I come in?" And they open the door and they let you in.
No, it's not exactly that. It's there's a level of liberty that we take into our own hands, and for us it is a matter of just coming and taking. We always say, take nothing but photos and leave nothing but footprints, and that's something that we live by, and that's something that we're so passionate and serious about.
So you started doing urban exploring and taking photographs in Houston.
May of 2018.
May of 2018, and you climbed a 50-some-odd story building?
That's correct.
Right?
Yeah. So what I ended up doing was one night I was laying in bed just restless, and I had been working through so much internally, and I just felt this urge, and it was like, okay, go to Houston. Like, take your camera and go to Houston. And I walked into a construction site. I took the stairs all the way up 50 stories, and I just sat above the city for half the night till 3, 4 in the morning. And there was just this level of peace that I've never felt before, to where everything inside my head just went completely silent, right? And so a lot of people see my work and they see what they think is like an adrenaline junkie, but look, like I've jumped out of planes.
Right.
I've went to war. I've done all types of absolutely adrenaline-packed things, right? And I've been on this verge of life and death long before I ever started taking photos. So the thing is that for me, it was a way to counteract PTSD and the depression I was going through at the time.
It was an outlet.
It was an outlet. And so when I'm sitting above a city, I'm not thinking like, my heart's not beating out my chest. My heart's beating, slower than it's ever beat before.
Sure.
And so I felt that for the first time that night, and I just never looked back. I mean, honestly.
So let's get into, so this is 2018. You sort of, you get a taste of this new passion of yours, which is photography, urban climbing. Let's fast forward. You're now out of the military, right?
There's one more detail I want to add in. During that summer was where like the crux of everything became very much more intense, because we were working through the fallout from this deployment, and I was working one-on-one with these soldiers, and this is where I lost 4 of my soldiers to suicide. And and when I say that, I mean we're meeting in my office, we're talking like this, we're working through plans with the command team on how to best take care of them. And then we had one soldier who 19 years old hung himself in his barracks room. We had another soldier, 24, came back from seeing combat in Iraq and literally laid down on the railroad tracks, blackout drunk, and let himself get ran over by a train. And this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with, right? And this is like, you go to work I get the call at 2 in the morning, hey, you need to wake up, you need to come here. We're scraping body parts off of railroad tracks, and that's like, you can't help but feel some sort of responsibility as the person that's helping them, And I don't look at it as a failure on my part, but that definitely took the stress of what I was doing already, being alone in my position and having so much weight on my shoulders. It made me take it a lot more personally, right?
Sure.
And so for me there too, my relationship to the military became much more personal, much more in depth, because I have much more skin in the game now, and then, my exploring and my photographing became much more of an outlet for me, to where it was something that I needed to work through, and, you're watching 19, 20, 22-year-olds, kill themselves, shoot themselves, hang themselves. I mean, it's like, and it's hard because
And these are friends.
Yeah, these are friends. These are co-workers. These are people that their lives are in part in your hands. And there's something about that you never really get over, And I had, I just lost another close friend in Afghanistan, and he got shot to death in Nangarhar province right before. And in response to that, Donald Trump at the time, when he was president, dropped the mother of all bombs in that valley because we had back-to-back casualties, right? And my friend was my very good friend, one of my mentors. I met him in SEER school at 19, and he mentored me all the way up until that point. You know, he was shot and killed. He left behind 5 kids, you know, and a couple stepkids too. And so these are things that, you know, I carry with me and were so personal. And then you have that, and you have how personal that is, and then you have the struggle with, like, but does my country really care about me?
Sure.
I mean, like, when I step out of this uniform, like, what am I to the rest of the world, and what am I to the rest of America, right? And so that became too much of a weight to carry around. So I knew, falling in love with photography and having it be such a therapy for me, I knew that I wanted to get out and pursue it, right? And so when they told me, we can't carry on with the injury that you have,
right,
you're going to have to get out, I knew that it was, you know, whether you want to say it's a God sent or it's the universe looking out for me, like, I knew that's exactly what it was.
So you had a medical retirement, right?
That's correct.
You were medically retired.
Last April.
April of 2020.
Right at the beginning of the pandemic.
But before that, really, December, because your life really turned upside down less than a year ago, and having a conversation, you and I having this talk earlier today and a few days ago, I can't believe what you've gone through since December. So why don't we talk about what happened before Christmas that led to your first arrest in just outside of Flagstaff, Arizona?
Yeah, no, I mean, I got out the Army and I just kept shooting. Like, for me it was, okay, I'm gonna be an artist. Like, that's it. Mm-hmm. You know, I've found something I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and I told myself, I'm gonna be an artist. And
you're all in.
I'm all in. So I didn't hold back. I shot all over the United States. I pursued my art, and December of 2020, I was traveling through Arizona on my way to Las Vegas, Nevada, and I was driving down I-40 West. I was actually sitting passenger seat. A friend of mine was driving, and we were taking a trip out west. I was doing my very first product shoot. I was super excited, right? And traffic stopped on this, you know, huge international highway. And I see a helicopter spinning. I see police cars driving backwards down the highway. And at first I thought someone was getting medevac to the hospital because, you know, they've got an airlift. It looked like, you know, a helicopter for an airlift. But then things started to look different to me when I saw state troopers, U.S. Marshals, driving backwards down the highway, and they're armed with assault rifles, and then automatically, like, I knew something different was going on, right? And so I just kind of waited. 5-10 minutes later, 15 to 20 of them, armed with assault rifles, dogs, everything, sprung out. Helicopter. Sprung out, surrounded the car, ordered me out onto the ground at gunpoint. I've got, you know, a gun to the back of my head. I'm getting out the car. I'm completely surrounded. I mean, just rifles. You know, and I'm no idea what's going on. And they're, you know, Mr. Wright, step out of the car, you know, and I'm...
What's going on?
And I was sick that day too. So I'm like running a fever, and I'm like sitting in the passenger seat, and I'm like half awake, you know. So I get out of the car, and then they, you know, drag me off the ground. They're taking pictures of me, and I have absolutely no idea what's going on. So then I'm put in the back of a police car. I asked the officer what's going on. The officer was like, you're like one of the most wanted people on this side of the United States. And he said armed robbery, kidnapping, and I just, like, coming out of left field with all types of things. They said I jumped out a window in Amarillo, Texas to evade police. They said I was armed and dangerous. I wasn't carrying anything. And so this all had started, it was like a game of telephone. Like, it all had started with a detective in Cincinnati who got wind of a supposed crime that I had done, and took a deep dive into my military background, saw special training, saw different marksmanship training, saw all these different things, and we don't know all of the intentions still to this day.
But they used it against you. They used your military training. They basically, the narrative was you're a Rambo-like, that is dangerous because of all this training, right?
Yeah, that was exactly it. Because of that, they got the FBI involved. They put out a nationwide warrant for me. They said that I was armed and dangerous, that, like I need to be taken, they need to arrest me with full force. And I wasn't carrying, I didn't kidnap anyone, I didn't rob anybody.
And what previous criminal record do you have?
I have 0.
Right.
So here I am,
They take you to jail, or? They
take me to jail. The jail refuses me because it's COVID time, and
You're sick.
I'm sick.
He's sick as well, by the way.
So the jail's like, you guys are going to take him to the hospital, And so I'm thinking like, I'm like, shit, it could be worse, But like, I'm the type of person where I've just been through so much, since childhood, that like, anywhere I go, I make the most of it, So they were like, take him to the hospital. And I'm like, all right, well. So I'm in the hospital, and I'm handcuffed to the hospital bed, being watched around the clock. And I'm sitting there, and I'm conversing back and forth with the officer, and I'm like, like, what's this about? And he's like, I have no idea. I'm just going off of information that I was told about you. So here, starting with one detective in Cincinnati, is just this web of lies. And that would continue for 6 months until that New York Times article.
So let's talk about that, because I think the timeline to your story is really important. So the first time you're arrested is right before Christmas in Flagstaff, Arizona, outside of Flagstaff. You're there for 2 months, right, in Arizona, before they transfer you back to Cincinnati. You're in Cincinnati for another 2 months in jail. So he's locked up for 4 months. And at this time, what happened to bail?
So I was denied bond in Arizona.
Bond?
I was told that I was not going to get bond because I was arrested on a fugitive warrant, and I was considered to be a flight risk.
Because of all your training as well. They looked at you, the evading training and all that you had.
Because of my training. Forget that I have no past criminal record. I was held without bond for 2 months.
No weapons on you when they arrest you.
No, confirmed that I didn't kidnap anybody, didn't rob anybody. All of this stuff confirmed. So I was held without bond for 2 months. The first month I spent in 23-hour lockdown. You're not seeing outside. You're not seeing. You get 1 hour out to take a shower, to make calls, and so I'm starting in the hospital because I think it's important, because this really started in the hospital. I was, of course, like I gotta call somebody, So I figure out I was kind of sweet talking the nurse, man. She was cute, like. And I'm like sitting there with a fever, like, yo, can you tell me how to use the phone? But like, she did, and I was like, I learned how to use the hospital phone that I was using for like to get meals and stuff like that to call out. And eventually, they moved the guard from out of my room into the hallway, and I used the phone to call my dad. And I started scribbling on this piece of paper this list of numbers that I still have to this day. I kept it with me the entire time and just added on to it. I called my dad. My dad knew someone that knew a lawyer. He calls the lawyer. I get a lawyer. My lawyer that's still with me to this day. I get a list of my friends' numbers. I tell them what's going on. I tell them that I have no idea what's happening, but I feel like it's going to be very serious. Then I get transferred to the jail. I'm in 23-hour lockdown. I get 1 hour out a day for the first month. I spend Christmas locked up. I spend New Year's locked up. You
managed to get some press, right? You managed to.
That wasn't until January.
Right, but while you're locked up, you get some press in the local paper in Cincinnati.
Yeah, so I'm calling on my hour out. I spend the whole hour except for 10 minutes on the phone. I took 10 minutes for hygiene and to clean myself. But I would call, like I was spending my own money on the phone. I'm just spending out my savings on the phone, on I didn't have commissary yet, on my legal defense. Like I'm just paying for all of it myself because my family doesn't have money for that, know. So I'm calling and I'm like, please tell my story to like whoever, whatever, and it wasn't until January that we got any press. So They moved me out of 23-hour lockdown. They moved me into general population. And I was in there with a good group of guys. I was. And Arizona was much more adult and we were treated with a lot more human decency than Ohio. But then I could talk a little bit more on the phone, and, we got in contact with Cincinnati Enquirer. We got in contact.
And that's what the article came out in the Cincinnati Enquirer.
That's correct. And
right?
One came out in Detroit because I have a lot of very popular work in Detroit, and they all advocated for me, but it just wasn't enough because.
And then finally, the New York Times.
Yeah, New York Times didn't come until I was back in Ohio. So I spent 2 months in Arizona with no bond, being told they're going to come get you tomorrow. I was told that for 2 months straight, And then eventually they come and get me in February. And I am handcuffed, shackled, hands and feet underneath a big jacket, oversized jacket. I'm put on the back of a plane. I'm flown to Cincinnati. I'm flown to Houston, then I'm flown to Cincinnati. And then I'm incarcerated in Cincinnati. And so we get to Cincinnati, and I get through the quarantine pod because we had to quarantine, and I get upstairs, and while I'm in the quarantine pod, they call me down to talk with the detective that's behind literally every bad thing happening.
It's that one detective out of
Just
Cincinnati
one.
who has some vendetta against you for whatever reason, who is, at this point, nationally selling a narrative, a false narrative about you, that you're some ramble crazy urban climbing guy that has some unknown motives of who knows what. Because of his training, we have to take the most serious precaution, right?
Yeah.
That's essentially what...
Absolutely that, and using my PTSD diagnosis against me, and just a lot of things. So they call me down from my cell, and this is the day before I'm supposed to go and get arraigned and have the chance to finally get out, get a bond. And he calls me down and he says, I'm Detective so-and-so, I want to talk to you. And I say, no, thank you, my lawyer's not present. And I ask if I can go back to my cell, and he stops me and he says, well, I just want you to know you're never getting out. And he was like, because they had seized my camera, my GoPro. I was working on a video project, took my laptop, they took all of my memory cards. And he was like, I've got all your footage. And he's like, I just want you to know I'm going jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And he was like, my aim is to get you charged.
Across country, jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
He said, my aim is to get you charged. And he said, you're going to go... He was like, even if you pay the bond here, he was like, I've already got you charged in Michigan for allegedly climbing the Mackinac Bridge. We beat that case. And
Philadelphia,
Louisiana, and Kentucky. So
how many states is that? 4?
Yeah, at that
5.
At 5. At that
5
point,
states.
At that point, it was just Ohio and Michigan, right? But he told me, like, I got you charged in Michigan. So he was like, you think you're getting out tomorrow? You're not. And he was like, you're just going to go state to state. And then you're going to get arraigned, and then you're going to get prosecuted, and then you're going to spend years in prison. And I look at this man, and I say, can I go back to my cell? But I knew right then and there, like, all right, like, it's time to put the gloves on, like, we're going to be fighting, like I'm fighting for my life at this point. So there's really no way to put into words, like, what that feels like. I already spent months and months and months spending 23 hours in a cell,
Sure.
Now I'm here in Cincinnati and I'm doing the same thing, and I'm being told by someone I don't know who's putting out to the world everything about me on a false narrative, and I'm being told, like, you're never getting out. And I was being vastly overcharged too.
Sure.
I was being charged with F2 burglary, never have taken anything, never have hurt anybody, not damaging anything,
right.
Just being charged with crazy.
Throwing
crazy
everything
things.
at you.
Yeah, and and just one of those charges carries 2 to 8 years in prison. Imagine having 20 something stacked on you.
So let's fast forward a little bit where it's April, you get out and it's April, New York Times contacts you, they do a piece on you in April, it didn't come out till June 4th, I think.
6th.
June 6th, right? So almost 3 months ago, 4 months ago?
Yeah, 4 months ago now.
June, July.
Almost to the day. Yeah.
Right. So much has happened just in those 4 months. So New York Times article comes out, what happens?
So preceding the New York Times article, I get out, I sit down to do the interview with Dave Phillips 2 days after I get out.
Who's Dave Phillips?
He is one of the best writers for New York Times. He generally covers military issues and veteran issues.
Okay.
So 2 days after incarceration, after I get out of incarceration, I'm sitting down with him, and then I'm being allowed to drive down to Louisiana to turn myself in there.
For another charge.
Yeah, and then drive back. On my way back home, following the court's orders on an ankle monitor, the same detective has me intercepted in Kentucky, has my car illegally seized. I'm intercepted at gunpoint again, unarmed. My car's illegally seized, my phone's illegally seized, and I was supposed to be locked up there, but they let me out that night, and I was stranded in Kentucky.
Tell them what the police officer there said regarding that whole situation.
The police officer said, and I quote, he said, because they had state troopers lined up from the border of Tennessee on every 2 to 5 miles. He was like, this is the type of stuff they have us do for murderers. And he said, all we were told is that you were not supposed to get out. So here's a man acting on a vendetta that the judge let me out to go and turn myself in elsewhere because his plan was to keep me incarcerated indefinitely and then get me sentenced and then just have me spend years of my life in prison. And so now I'm carless. I get out and I lose my only car. It's illegally seized without a warrant, my phone, and my dad had to come get me three days later. Actually, a really great story. Like, I get out the jail there and I hobble down to this bar in Bowling Green, Kentucky, where this army of college students take me in and let me use the phone to call my lawyer. And I walk into the bar and I'm like, listen, I got a better bar story than all of you guys.
What was your first drink? What was your first drink? I would hope it was a stiff one.
I don't even remember. It was definitely a stiff one. But I just walked in there and I'm like, look, y'all think you have bar stories, but no. Let me tell you how I ended up in Bowling Green, Kentucky tonight. So, so I ended up we all hung out and we drank and I got a hotel because I still have my wallet, and my dad came and got me 3 days later. That came out in the Enquirer too. And then fast forward to May, I'm still on house arrest. The judge refused, after seeing how they used my ankle monitor as a means to nearly take my life, the judge refuses to take it off of me because she's not going to tell police how to do their job. I got feelings about that, but they keep me on it. I'm working. I'm starting to sell my work digitally as NFTs in May. Okay? And I'm sitting at home and I'm trying to mint a piece when I get a knock at the door and there's 10 to 15 armed officers outside, and they raid my dad's apartment and take me at gunpoint unarmed for a third time.
This is like a nightmare, never-ending deja vu.
It's absolutely crazy. They illegally seized my phone without a warrant. He has now got me charged in Philadelphia, another case that's been resolved. And using the same narrative, just going place to place of, here's this dangerous guy, he's a threat to society, whatever. So I'm locked up for a whole nother week. And that was where I had this is pivotal because people ask me what's the lowest moment? I had my lowest moment on the last day that I was locked up again because they arrested me on a Friday on purpose. So I couldn't at least get arraigned until Monday. I wouldn't get arraigned until Wednesday. They aimed to hold me in on a $200,000 bond so that they could put me back into that cycle that they had me in of just being locked up for months. The judge denied the bond, gave us a lower bond. We paid it, and while I was waiting to get out, I'm sitting in the quarantine pod, and I was in this cell 48, and I'll never forget this. I was in this cell with no windows. And one cell in this entire jail that I've been all over the place, but this one in this jail had no windows. I remember my bunkie got out. We were sitting there talking. We're laying there. It's afternoon time. I had gotten arraigned in the morning. I was waiting to get out. We're sitting there talking. They called him, and then they called me, but then they told me to go back into my cell. So my bunkie, who I met for maybe a night, he's gone, and I don't know where he is now, but he's gone. So, and I'm sitting there waiting, and I just remember this incredible darkness. Like I can't even put it into words. Like I'm a very intuitive person where I'm in tune with myself. I'm in tune with everything going on around me all the time, and I feel things. I feel things very deeply. But I was laying there, and I should have been out. My dad paid the bond in the morning, and it was just taking hours and hours to be processed. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what's going on, And I just felt this darkness, and my whole body is just riddled with pain. I mean, like, to where I physically felt like I was dying. I could barely breathe. I was laying in there, and like I just remember, like I had this moment where like I like roll out of my bed, and I'm like trying to stretch on the floor. And like I fall down on the floor, and I'm like pouring tears, like a puddle of tears on the ground. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, this is it. Like this is the lowest point in my journey, And I'm sitting there, and I'm like screaming. I'm in so much pain. I have no idea what this is. I still don't know to this day. But I just remember thinking like I'm at the lowest point, and I was like, I'm just sitting there, and I'm just praying. I'm like, please just like get me through today, like forget the future, like whatever, just get me through today, because I knew I was at the bottom, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm sitting there on the floor, I'm pouring tears, I'm in this immense amount of pain. I just feel this darkness, like there was just such a presence in this cell that I could not shake. And I just remember thinking like, Isaac, you're at the bottom. Like everything after this is going to be up. It's going to be up. I don't know how I knew, I just knew. And so I'm shaking on the floor. My body's riddled with pain. I'm like, I tried laying down. I couldn't sleep. And I had been up the entire night before, because you never sleep before court. Right. And like, I had been up the entire night before. I mean, I'm exhausted, but I can't sleep. I'm riddled with pain. And so I'm just pouring tears. And I just remember praying like, please just like, let me get through today. Like, I know right now, like I'm literally walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Like, I'm going through it right now, And later on that evening, like, they call me, and I go outside. I get out, I go outside, like I breathe fresh air again. And a week later, like the New York Times article came out, and they, put out my life story, and they put out the truth about me, and they put out like who I really am. And, there's elements of the story that I'm like, okay, I feel like this could have been written better, or this like isn't true, like, but it's, the most important thing is that Dave Phillips recognized me and portrayed me as a human being. Yeah. Because for moms, I was not a human being to really anybody, and I was treated like less than a human being. And when you're incarcerated, you're treated like less than a human being. And so the story came out, and I'm reading the comments, and I'm like pouring tears, because 99% of people, they're like, this is just a person expressing themselves, healing themselves, going through like a natural process and bringing something beautiful to the world through. This is someone that literally means no harm.
Sure.
And,
nonviolent.
Yeah. And after that, things started changing.
One of the things that I want to, sorry for interrupting, but one of the things that you said to me that I thought was incredibly powerful when we were talking is, you said that the New York Times, that article, it made you visible to the world, right? Because there are so many people that are in your position that don't have the luxury of that visibility, no voice, and they just get sucked into the system, and they get lost in the system. And now all of a sudden, it made you visible, and it made others accountable.
Right. And so if you just look at my story, like the way that I was vastly overcharged, that's a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
Right? So you have people that, if they can, all they have to say is, look, we think there's enough evidence to maybe throw this at them, and they're going to throw things at you to see what sticks, right? And if most cases were taken to trial, there would be far, and there'd be like our prison system wouldn't work, right? But the thing is that like they stack these charges on you. So if you have the charges stacked on you, they can justify a high bond. If they can justify a high bond and you can't pay it, then you can't get out. So then you got to choose between getting out and legal representation, or you don't have money for either one of them, right? So if you have money for neither one of them, then you're locked in there, then you're doing time, then you're forced into a plea on something that you might not have even done.
Sure.
So the thing is, it's like...
It's a no-win situation.
It's a no-win situation, but beyond that, it's completely and utterly inhumane.
Sure.
It's enslaving people due to the fact that they have no money to represent themselves and no other outlets, no voice. And that's our prison system in the United States. And so the thing was that was me, and I still feel a sort of survivor's guilt because I've got friends locked up for the pettiest of things, the dumbest of things, that if they had the legal representation or the money or the voice or anything, right, they could be breathing free air.
You're one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones, and like some people say, oh, you're not lucky, you just fought like hell to get through it and whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. It's the fact that I'm breathing free air, and I know people that aren't, and I know how it feels to not breathe that free air, and I know why they're not breathing free air, and it's not fair. It's completely evil.
Let's talk about the path to positivity, and that being NFTs, and how this is a whole new space for you, right? You just got into NFTs. You heard about them. When you got out in May was sort of the first time you wanted to sort of educate yourself in that space, and talk about that and talk about sort of where you are now with that, because to me, this is the silver lining.
Yeah, I mean, by June, I was dealing with 5 cases.
Which...
And I needed
incredibly expensive.
I needed good legal representation for all of them. I got out with less than $10,000 in my savings left. And I owed all of that to my Cincinnati lawyer. I hadn't paid him because I needed money on the phone. I couldn't do it. So I just told myself, I set out to be an artist. I'm going to be an artist right now. Like, I'm not going to quit. I don't care if I've got X, Y, and Z and this person telling me that my art is wrong or whatever. I set out to be an artist. I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to work through this as an artist. I'm going to get paid as an artist. I'm going to beat the case as an artist. And I'm going to go on and live my life as an artist. So that's exactly what I did. I didn't quit. I never quit. I'm sleeping on the floor of my dad's apartment. I mean, like, tiny apartment. I'm sleeping on the floor. I got my dad taking me in. He's spent time in prison. He knows what I'm going through, and I'm sitting there at my laptop that I spend one of my $10,000 to get, or $1,200 of it, and my friends told me about NFTs, and here's the crypto space where it doesn't matter if someone in the physical art world is like, yeah, that's good enough for a gallery or whatever. It's like, no, if someone sees your work and they think that it's worth it, then boom, you can make. The market determines your value, right? And for me in this alternative art form, and for me in this art form that's so vastly unique, I was like, this is perfect. So I didn't look back a single time after that day. I minted my first NFT. I sold a few in May, and that was enough to like hold me over a little bit for one of my lawyers. I still, had 4 more that I had to pay, but like I was like, okay, I'm gonna get there. And then I just kept sharing my story. I mean, like everywhere I go, I talk about my story because that's all we have as human beings. There's an interconnectivity between all of us, and just being transparent and being vulnerable is what connects us as human beings. 100%. So I kept telling it online. I was, sharing it on my Instagram and on my Twitter, and Twitter was where all of the NFT space was, and I kept sharing it and I kept talking about it, and I started making a lot of better sales. And then moving into August was when things like completely did like a 180. Like I had made enough sales in July to pay the majority of my legal fees in May, June, July, and this is over $100,000. This is upwards of $200,000, and I had sold my artwork, and here's people.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, here's people looking at my work and paying me thousands of dollars for it, and whereas I was told by so many people, like, you're a fool for thinking that your work could ever make it in the art world. Like, you're challenging legal lines. You're doing something that, like, isn't necessarily considered okay in society yet. But as artists, like, if artists don't push the boundary, then nobody else does.
Sure.
Right? So the thing is like, where would we be if there was not artists, if there was not pioneers that said, okay, I see how this is, but, like, I'm going to color outside the lines anyways, because I can see a world where we live this way, or where this is appreciated, right? The magic is always in the gray areas, always in the gray areas. And so, and that's where a lot of truth lies in life, and I really do believe that. But I just told myself, like, this is it. At this point, my life's on the line anyways. What do I got to lose? Like, I've been through everything else, and I was like, I made it through this, and I survived, right? I've been held at gunpoint, being black, being specially trained by the military. If I even blink wrong, I'm riddled with bullet holes, and now my mom's burying me at 25, right? I made it through all that. I made it through every 23 in one day. I made it through every bologna sandwich, like, every court date and whatever. So at this point, it was like, I'm all in. I got nothing to lose. And so I kept telling my story. I kept saving. My own lawyers told me, don't sell your work, because if you sell your work, then they can turn around and use that against you in court. I said, y'all got to get paid somehow, And not just that, but, like, I got to take care of myself.
Sure.
And I got a family to take care of. And so I just kept selling. I kept selling my work, and in August it completely exploded. I introduced a series on OpenSea called Where My Vans Go. And
Speaking of Vans?
Yeah, I got my Vans on tonight.
How many pairs do you have?
Oh, man. I don't even know at this point. Probably close to 20. And all it is there might be some shots up here. There's going to be some where you see my Vans in the shots. And shots like that from all around the United States, me climbing. There's now 115 of them in the series. We just dropped the last drop yesterday or 2 days ago. But that was the first drop, and I was charging, what was $800 a picture.
Yep.
We did 50 in the first drop, 25 in the second drop at double that price. And then this last drop was 10 ETH, was $33,000 a picture. And
I've seen some resales for six figures.
Yeah, we've had resales for up to $150,000. This last drop, we just sold over $1 million worth of art. And all of that goes to me as the
By the way, he gets 85% of that. And then on every resale, you get 10%, or is it? 10% on every resale in perpetuity, forever, right? This is the NFT model, right?
So,
and by the way, we're talking about, again, 3 months now?
3 months.
4 months now? So all of this has happened to him in less than a year, in 10 months.
I've sold roughly $3 million worth of art in the past 3 months.
We're going to open up for some questions.
I'll say one thing.
Go ahead, please.
I'll say one thing. It wouldn't be like money still doesn't mean a thing. I mean, it represents a certain level of freedom, right? But it was more seeing what I look at money as a facilitator of your truth. So you take your truth, and money can allow you to do what you want with your truth, and it can allow you to take it deeper into the world, right? So now, I look at the sales that I made. I paid my mom's house off. I've got 3 good friends that I was incarcerated with that are closer than brothers to me. I've got 2 of them out now, and a third one that's on his way in less than a year, right? And I've set aside $50,000 for each one of them to start a new life, because they're young and they're black and they're felons, and there's no one's going to reintroduce you to society, and there's not that many jobs available to you. And I've watched my own father go through that, and that is taking purpose and truth and then using money as a facilitator to help do what you want with it, right? And so for me, I honestly really haven't done much for myself with it. But the thing is that what it does for me is it allows me to look at everything I want to fight, everything that I went through. And the biggest thing I think every single day is, okay, I'm making money now, and it's looking like I'm going to concrete myself as, one of the best artists in the world now. And that's amazing and that's wonderful. But without purpose or truth, that means absolutely nothing, right? And so I think every single day I'm like, I'm never going to back down from the fight. Like, if I wanted to take my money and disappear quietly, who could blame me, right? But the thing is like, that's not who I am.
Sure.
Because now I look at everything I happen to me and I feel a responsibility to fight back. And I feel a responsibility to grapple with the same system that entangled me and had me enslaved for a while. And still, we're fighting through the legal case, but we're very close to getting good resolution for it. And that's what it's all about for me, is that I'm thinking prison abolition and complete reform on how we view penalty in the United States, and how we, a world designed around rehabilitation and love and care and forgiveness and things like that. Not, locking people up for every little thing and then treating them subhuman and then trying to reintroduce them as human beings to this world when they're seen as less than that. The way we do things in the United States, it completely has to change. And so now I'm on the path to figuring out how I'm going to play my part in that. And I can see now, I've always known that there was a much bigger picture there, and I've just followed that light, even on the darkest days. But now I'm just thinking it could be bigger than I ever imagined.
Congratulations, I applaud that. You're using your voice for those who don't have a voice. Let's go to questions. Alexa, can we grab a mic, and can we, just so that, any questions? Who wants to start it off? Go ahead, please, just if you can project in the interim.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's incredible and extremely inspirational. I'm a huge art fan and historian, and I would love to know, as you move forward, what is your biggest goal as an artist in the next 5, 10, 15 years?
Well, goal as an artist. So, short-term goals, my Where My Vans Go series is doing really well. I want to, at the rate it's moving right now, we have a chance of getting it into Christie's and Sotheby's, and that's something that's being discussed, being talked about. That would be a dream. But my goal as an artist is to be able to express freedom to the world. When people see my work, I want them to see freedom. I want them to understand human beings taking liberty into their own hands to express and be free the way that humans were meant to be. But not just that, I want it to be a facilitator of freedom. So as I make money, I want to continue challenging the system with my work. I don't ever see myself, this might not ever be the last time I'm incarcerated. That's a hard thing to say, right? But that's just me choosing to fight. And that's me choosing a tougher road rather than an easier road, right? And for me, I want my art to continue to challenge the world we live in. And I imagine I want my own artist collective to where we're combining urban exploring along with social justice messaging. Imagine explorers, graffiti writers, any underground artist, getting to places and putting out messages about things we care about or things we think should change, right? It's technically quote unquote illegal art, but there's so much that I feel like needs to change that we have to challenge it head on. So I want my art to continue challenging the things I disagree with, Auction houses, great. Money, great. Museums, great, wonderful. But at the end of the day, I think all that's going to burn down one day anyways. I think that, the truth is what we're going to leave behind. And so I really realized this when I was sitting in my cell. I'd be reading books every night. reading books and writing till 2 or 3 in the morning, right? I'd be sitting there reading and I think to myself, this is all that's going to matter at the end of the day. When we, whatever comes and goes, someone somewhere is going to be sitting in some corner reading a book, looking at a piece of art or whatever, and it's going to give them the strength, the hope to go on, right? And clinging to the few books and scraps of papers that I had and that I still have, that's what I always think about. The greatest thing we can pass on, to me, is an idea, right? So money's going to come and go. Success is going to come and go. The museums and whatever is like, it's going to come and go, right? But the truth that it facilitates, that I can put out to the world, that's going to be concreted in history forever, to where people look at the principles down the line, and that gives them strength to be who they want to be as a person and as an artist. That's what I want people to see. I want people seeing my work and they're saying, like, that's someone that like stacked up all the odds and like bet on themselves against all of it, and look at them now,
Sure.
And I want that to be a message for anybody that's seeking freedom, true freedom in the world, where it's like, this is my truth and I'm going to live it. You're going to have all the odds stacked against you, because the world's not always ready to accept a place for a person like you. So when it's not ready to accept a place, you have to make a place. And to make a place, you got to break down a lot of walls. And you might have to sit behind some walls. And you might have to sit behind some bars. And that's hard, right? But if it means you live in your truth at the end of the day, it's worth it.
Sure.
So that's what I want to do with my art.
Great answer. Sorry, in the back there. Hold on one second. We're going to get a mic so we can... You can project as well?
Yeah, I can. I'm a former teacher, so.
There you go.
So first of all, you're so inspiring. So my name's Diane, and I'm a filmmaker.
Nice to meet you, Diane.
It's very nice to meet you. Your art is stunning. And there were two things that you said, because I think a lot. I'm a former educator, so I was in the education field for like 30 years before I switched to filmmaking, which everyone thought was crazy for a 50-year-old woman.
Yeah.
And just the other day, another filmmaker said to me, you have to self-authorize yourself, which is what I heard you say tonight.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, what is it about your life, your upbringing, that you think gave you the power to do that? And then this idea of racial justice, since that was part of the discussion. So it's a two-pronged question. I'm sorry, I'm a teacher. So.
No, you're fine.
So it's like, what gave you the power to self-authorize yourself? And then what does racial justice mean to you?
That's good questions. You're definitely a teacher. That's okay, class is in session. Self-authorization. I feel like that first, this is a big breakdown, but number one, I had parents that, especially my father, demanded or taught me that really nothing is impossible. And I mean that in every sense of the word. I mean, people look at my work and they're like, you're not afraid of anything. The only thing I'm afraid of is not living my truth in life. I can say that honestly. I'm not afraid of heights. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of whatever I have to go through for that. I'm afraid of not living my truth in life, because at that point, you're dead to me, like you're living, but you're not living, right? And so I had a father who taught me, like, I can do anything, and like, and if you're really dedicated enough, you can see it through. But also, more than that, I feel like when you discover yourself as a human being and you really go through that process of strict accountability, to where you're being honest, you're righting your wrongs, you're taking accountability for who you are as a person. You're really getting to know yourself. You're taking the time to fall in love with who you are as a person. That's the first step. After that, then I feel like truth finds you. Whatever you're supposed to do in the world or carve out in the world, it finds you after you find yourself. So when truth found me, and like I knew that this was what I wanted to do, it was after or in the process of when I was really falling in love with and finding myself. And so that self-authorization came as, this is bigger than me. This is something that I have to do. It's not something that I just get to do or want to do. It's like, I have to do it. If I don't do it, I can't breathe properly. I can't look at myself in the mirror. You know, like when we chose to do the legal defense for my case, I said, I'm taking the defense that I'm 100% in the right. That I'm not wrong for the person that I'm being. I'm in courtrooms, I'm talking to police officers, and they're all saying I have this detective putting out all this stuff to the world about me, and I'm saying, I don't care what you say, I'm not wrong. I'm right. This is my truth. I'm going to live it, right? And so that self-authorization, I feel like it finds you. And when it finds you, like, you really can't get away from it. You can't get away from it because it's going to grab you and it's going to take you places that you never even thought that you were going to be, you know? Because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be sitting on the stage tonight. I wouldn't be talking. So it just, it brings you into rooms that you could never even imagine yourself being in. Or maybe you imagine yourself, but, it's way bigger than what you think it's going to be if you choose to see it through. So that, and then racial justice to me, and it's also a broad question, but racial justice to me looks like completely leveling the playing field. And that means, to me, we've got to do away with how I honestly think we need complete redesigning of our entire justice system, prisons included. I think that we need, it's going to start like fixing any other problem with accountability, right? And America is not healing because America is not accountable. We've failed to, every single time, we have something like the murder of George Floyd, right? And we put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole and we call it a fix. But we fail to address where all of these things started in our nation's history and go back and cohesively tear down those systems, put new ones in place, give the help and the aid to the people that need the help and the aid. And I think that until we are 100% honest and accountable about how we've treated not just Black Americans in this country, but any minority, there's going to be no path to healing, right? And because we've not taken accountability for it, or we take halfway accountability, just talking about it in textbooks and having holidays is not fixing a problem. Not fixing a problem that is so deep and deeply entrenched in our everyday lives, There has to be complete surgery. And because America fails to take accountability, eventually it will have to, because education is catching up at a rate to where the Black community and other minorities are starting to go back and say, oh, wait, history was really like this? Like, we were taught this way in school, but wait, it was like this? And those same systems are continuing to grow, and we're continuing to suffer still today. Eventually, collective Black education and not just that, minorities, we can get into class issues, whatever, is going to come to a point where people realize this is how things have been, and they're continuing to just shape-shift, but the systems are the same. They're growing, but they're the same. And eventually the education is going to catch up to the wrongdoing, and there's going to be unrest like we've never seen it in America. And I 100% believe that. I think that what happened with George Floyd and some of the other incidents, that's going to be like a drop in the water compared to how unrest will be eventually in time. Should we not be accountable as a country for how we have and are, and it looks like will be, treating Black Americans? And so racial justice to me looks like accountability first, and you can't have forgiveness and healing until you have accountability. And then it looks like with accountability comes being honest about every small detail and everything we have in place that needs to go. And then it needs to be torn down and completely redesigned. And I 100% believe that, because it's broken. It's completely broken. I am just one example of that, right? Sure. Now that's a huge, huge thing. What that looks like, I don't know. There's a lot of things we're going to have to do to get to that point. But I think that's it for me.
With that said, last question. I just realized we're way over. So we're going to take one more question. And then we can have, for those of you who want to stick around, we can have continued conversation over cocktails. And I know some of you have dinner reservations. So last question, Jimena.
We're walking up over here. Last and a half. Did Vans make an offer yet?
They have not.
They better get on it after
I know.
tonight.
They should.
I'll pass the mic to him, but I have to say that I'm not surprised that art has been your ally to spread the message, because art has been the ally of all human revolutions.
Yeah.
So congrats on being an ally of art.
Yes.
All right. Last thing. So your latest, let's finish it off with your NFT drop. Where can people learn more about your NFT drop? And then we're going to take this offline over cocktails.
So if any of you guys are social media people, my Instagram and my Twitter are Drifter Shoots. It's DRIFTER Shoots, SHOOTS. And that is where you can see a lot more of my work than you see here. You can see my writing on Instagram. I am also writing a couple of books right now, and starting to work on some really amazing things. My NFT drops are mostly on Twitter, but the websites are OpenSea and Super Rare, which is basically like the best of the best digital artists from around the world. So OpenSea and Super Rare, and then my Instagram and my Twitter are Drifter Shoots.
Well, I want to thank you all for being part of this. I want to thank Isaac for taking the time to join us from Cincinnati and to share your story. Continued success. We're all proud of everything that you stand for, and keep pushing forward with the art. You're doing great things.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pablo.